Hi, it's Rod here. We're just back with another update on the COVID-19, day 4 here in New Zealand with regards to the lockdown. The rest of the world, here's a synopsis of what's happening.
So I'm sad to tell you that this bus picture was taken in Sweden just 2 days ago. And we can clearly see there is no social distancing, in fact there's social crowding. So that's actually a pretty frightening picture really. Now the reason I show this is I've just been listening to a fascinating talk by 2 American doctors on the New English Journal of Medicine site, and I'll put the link, you can listen to their podcast. Now they weren't saying that the virus is not spread on surfaces, they are agreeing the virus is spread on surfaces. The virus is spread by fomites, mobile phones or pens or whatever. The virus is spread on surfaces. It does go from surfaces to people's mouths. But in practice, they believe that most people have actually been infected through droplet infection, through not keeping their 2 meters distance. That determines our existence, through not realising our health depends on everyone else. So they were saying the main driver of infection is actually droplet infection, showing the absolutely crucial nature of maintaining 2 meters distance from absolutely everyone who is not in your household at the time being. So yes, we carry on with meticulous hygiene, of course. We clean our surfaces, we disinfect with alcohol, we do all that. We're not saying that doesn't happen, we know for a fact it does. But they were believing that the main driver of infection, that most cases were caused by droplet infection. So I'll let you listen to that at your leisure, and I'll post the direct link. Well worth a listen. Now, Saturday the 28th of March, total number of infected cases confirmed in the world. Total number of deaths.
It's actually Sunday here in New Zealand. We're 24 hours ahead, so it's the 29th in New Zealand. The UK is at a different time zone. So this video has only been out for 3 hours, 4 hours. So I'm really talking about it in real time, but just so that you're aware that that's the day.
Deaths in the world, total number recovered in the world. So things still going up in terms of
the other video I did today, it was interesting. The guy introduced it with 400,000 cases throughout the world, and now we're up to 600,000. So you can see it's a 50% increase in a day or so from the last program where this gentleman was interviewed until today's update.
Now, I'm going to flag up South Korea first because the number of cases in South Korea is rising slowly. Because they've got extensive testing and contact tracing. Now, this is really epidemiology at its most basic: testing, contact tracing, isolation and quarantine. And yet it's not being done all around the world. Am I missing something here? And I'll give you some examples of where it's not being done as we go through. Now, Germany, the cases are increasing, but the Germans are testing an awful lot, so that's very encouraging to see. Lots of testing going on in Germany. Now, places where the news is appalling, or where the news is not so good. Another 8,000 cases in the last 24 hours in Spain, taking up to that total number of infirmed cases. Another 832 deaths, bringing it up to 5,700 deaths, the worst in 24 hours. Now, these figures, of course, are truly tragic and appalling. But I expect them to go down as the effects of the Spanish lockdown increases. And the benefit of the Spanish lockdown works through the incubation period of the disease, which is typically a week, but can be up to 14 days. 2 to 14 days. So I'm expecting this to increase, maybe in the short term, but I'm hoping Spain is going to peak really soon, hopefully about 10 days after the lockdown was instigated. So there are going to be bad days ahead, but there is hope because this lockdown will start to work. And especially if Spain brings on more tests and they do extensive testing and contact tracing as well. We need this double approach. Now, this ice rink in Madrid that seems to have been bothering me for days, apparently it's now full of full of dead bodies, apparently. Full lockdown in Spain, of course, as in the UK now. Now, I heard a report from Spain that people were driving around a bit last weekend, going out for a nice trip or whatever, going to the sea. That's much less this weekend. This is no time for any non-essential trips out of the home. It's that simple. If your trip is non-essential, do not make that trip. Public concern is increasing in Spain, so public compliance is probably also increasing as well as a result of that. So that's encouraging. Now, my country, the UK.
So he just talks about 14,000 people in the UK have it. It's doubling every 3 to 4 days. They're setting up temporary morgues. So all elective surgery has been cancelled for 3 months. There are 181 deaths in the UK, which that was yesterday, and that brings it up to 595 deaths. This is going to continue to rise, and there's 6,000 people being treated in hospital. And Boris Johnson, the Minister of Health and the Chief Health Person also have the virus. It just shows you and then he goes on to talk about how they had a budget where they were all crammed into the Parliamentary House. And he does, I might do a third video actually. It's just so good what he talks about afterwards with regards to the politicians not getting it. I know myself when I came down here to South Waikato about 16 years ago, I'd done antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis analysis at Waikato University and the whole pandemic thing. See, one of the things that this brings up is when we lose antibiotics as a line. So when the Spanish flu went through back in 1818, around that time, 1817, antibiotics was developed in around 1918. So antibiotics were about 1946. And so we've had antibiotics for the last, 70 years. But before that, they didn't have it. So you get the virus, N1H1 and Spanish flu, and then you get bacterial infections in the holes of the lungs when the body was trying to fight it, and then they die from that complication. So we still can't treat the virus, but we can treat the antibiotics to treat the bacterial infection. But one of the challenges is the way we use antibiotics around the world. You give antibiotics to cows and they'll become 30% bigger with regards to for market, So there's some horrifying wastes of this most valuable resource that we have with the antibiotics. And once you lose it forever. You just can't create any more. It's just a little window of opportunity. So this is another thing that people like myself and this gentleman who understand the science of what's going on with biology. And what he was saying in his video is that the politicians somehow think that they can will the biology to be different and will the virus to not interrupt their budget and stuff like that. And it just shows you how our politics have become so mentally, where individual humans think they can boss other individual humans around and deny the biology or the physics or the chemistry of what's going on. I found this when I came from the Faculty of Science into the Faculty of Social Science into Sociology. So I came with maths and physics and biology and chemistry and all those things. And then I met a whole group of people that spent their whole academic life with theories based on Marx or an ideology, that sort of thing. And I just found it quite interesting that there was a whole faculty in the university that was based on some human idea which wasn't tied into reality. And so what we're seeing now around the world with this virus is politicians who don't understand what a pandemic is. They don't understand the biology, physics, chemistry, but somehow they've got into power. They've made themselves wealthy from it, and they're in a bubble world when really the reality is about living rural, urban 10 times or 100 times more important because you produce the food and the